if I had to say one thing about mentoring, be open to it. If someone says, hey, I'd like to learn from you, show me, teach me, coach me, be open to it and do it. But go at it with everything that you have. Don't hold anything back. Share everything that you know, every mistake that you've made, every positive thing that's happened, and just try to be the best example of this profession that you can be to them, whether it's from your speaking or your writing or whatever it may be. But just be open and honest and don't hold anything back.
Rising above the buzz of ultrasonic cleaners and the clanking of stainless steel are the ideas and voices that are changing an industry. You're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for the people, processes, and products that are improving our sterile processing world. Each week we speak with frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you fight dirty. Every instrument, every time. Whether you're tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you did. Now turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go Beyond Clean.
This week on Beyond Clean, we speak with Bob Mars, VP of Clinical Consulting here at Beyond Clean. Bob previously served as the Director of Consulting Services and Field Operations for 9 years with Aesculap, and prior to that, worked in the perioperative setting for 21 years in various roles from certified surgical technologist to CSD technician, case cart coordinator, sterile processing manager, and director. Bob maintains certifications as a CRCST, CIS, CHL, and is an instructor for ISHM. He served as the president of the Texas State Association of Central Service Professionals for 6 years and an ISHM executive board member for 2. He also served as the co-chair of the ISHM Membership Committee and Orthopedic Committee. He is a current member of the ISHM Foundation Board. Bob holds a bachelor's degree in professional communications from Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. He travels throughout the U.S. and the world speaking about various CSD and infection control issues, and he has published in numerous healthcare periodicals and contributed to the ISHM CRCST 7th edition and CHL Leadership Manual. Bob has a passion for excellence in sterile processing and believes that certification through education provides the foundation needed for superior patient care. And Hank, there's elements of that we've read twice before when Bob has been a guest on the Beyond Clean podcast. He will be the first 3-time guest on the Beyond Clean podcast. And everything that you just heard about his career, most of those were not paying gigs. He was giving his time to an industry he loves, and he's never made any bones about it, how much he loves it and how much he thinks you should love it too.
Tell you what, Justin, Bob is the man. I don't have to tell anyone that. Anyone who knows Bob already knows that. But I'm hoping to introduce another generation to Bob who may not already know him. And obviously he's doing a ton with Beyond Clean. He's doing real talk videos. He's been on, this is his 3rd podcast, as you said, with Beyond Clean. He's out in the field consulting. He is all over the place, but still this industry is growing very rapidly and there's new technicians coming in every single day. And they deserve to know the Bob Mars that we know and the gifts of insight and perspective that he has provided to the industry through decades now. So I'm pumped to get the opportunity to talk to Bob today about how a career in sterile processing can bring benefit not only to yourself, but to the rest of the industry.
All right. We're going to get right into it with Bob Mars after a short break.
You're listening to Beyond Clean, the global voice of sterile processing.
Joining us now is Bob Mars, VP of Clinical Consulting, right here at Beyond Clean. Bob, it's been a couple of years since you joined the team, and I think that's the last time we interviewed you on the podcast. But this one's going to be a special episode. It's all about building a legacy in sterile processing. And I know that you're going to try to deflect the heaps of praise I'm about to give you because I know you. And Honestly, you are a legacy to this industry, Bob. You're kind of this personality from Cheers, like Norm. If you walk into a room, everybody's like, Bob. I don't know how you're going to respond to this, but I really want to acknowledge what you've done for the industry. And I know that you've been an example for so many. And that's what's going to be so great about this interview today is you're going to share your secret sauce and your success so that others may also build their own sterile processing legacy. So Bob, first off, thanks for everything that you've done for the industry, and thanks for being willing to come on and share your secrets with the audience.
Well, thank you very much, Justin. I'm honored to be here, and you're correct. I am completely embarrassed.
So we'll divert from that so that we can, I don't want to embarrass you for sure, but I do. This may lead into some embarrassing moments because whenever you're new in a career, you do a lot of things wrong. And I read a post from Gary Vee the other day on LinkedIn, and he was like, listen, if you do 10 things and 7 of them don't work, but then you only do 3 things and all 3 work, you're not better off for batting 1,000, 3 for 3. You're better off having made those 7 mistakes and still had the same number of wins, which I thought was just so poignant. And I think if we all thought that way more, there'd be room for us to fall down and get back up early in our careers. And again, knowing you, I know you'd be open to share these kinds of stories. So your early days of sterile processing, tell us what you did right, but also tell us, what you might have done differently.
Let me start with what I think I should have done differently. When I went into it, I went into it from being a scrub technician to working in sterile processing. And it was by accident, I guess, or not by accident. I had a craniotomy and I couldn't scrub anymore. And so I had a really good friend who was running the sterile processing department. And I asked them, hey, can I have a job, please? I need to work. I feel like I'll know the instruments and I can come down and do a good job. But behind that, I was thinking, this is going to be a piece of cake. These people, they're finally going to have someone, who knows what they're doing down there, dadgummit. And so I kind of went into it like that. And boy, was I think it took about a day for my eyes to be completely opened to how much I didn't know, how new I was. It took me aback, and it really humbled me very quickly.
So, Bob, coming in that story, I think we hear a lot of similar stories like that for folks that come from the OR, especially because you're right. There's that idea because you know how these instruments are used and you automatically understand the rest of the process. So I'm sure there's going to be some folks out there who's like, yep, I made that mistake. But, to Justin's other part of that question, as you begin in the industry, it is easy to be afraid to make decisions or to be confident in the decisions that you're making, I guess. And so someone like yourself that has been through this now and built a career that you can look back on and be proud of, what are those things looking back then to those early days that you say, it was really a good decision that I did X, Y, and Z? Like, what are those things that you would recommend folks starting off to definitely do or focus on?
I think after my complete humbling, I wanted to work in every area and know every area of the department very well. I wanted people to consider me the best, like in decontamination, assembly, sterilization, case cart building, everything. I wanted to, I guess for lack of a better term, be the top of my class, or at least try to be in my own mind. Then hopefully I would get some kind of feedback from somebody saying, hey, you're doing a decent job, And so I looked to some of the folks in the department who had been there for a while. And I asked them, I said, will you just teach me? Show me everything that you know, just don't keep anything from me. Just feed me like you're letting me drink out of a fire hose. and I'll take in as much as I can. I'll ask you to slow down where I need you to slow down, but I really want to know everything. Once I took that attitude on, it really, really helped me. It helped me grow. It helped me to be humble. It helped me to just try to grow. And so from there, I think my next big question was, do you guys have a certification in this field? Can I do that? I'm a certified scrub tech. I would love to become certified and learn more about this job if I can. And so my boss was like, absolutely, and she gave me I believe back then it was either the third or fourth edition of the Isham CRCST textbook.
So Bob, you've already alluded to this a little bit. And Justin actually, I think, just came out and said it. You're a guy in the industry who is very, very, very well liked. And I can say that being as a guy who's, I've got lovers and haters, right? But Bob, you've only got lovers, people who you have come in contact with, through the years in the industry and all different aspects and contexts. Like you've worked in hospitals, you've been on the vendor side, you've been consulting, you've been an educator. And through all that, through all those experiences and all the committees and everything that you've served on, people still walk away in those relationships with a very high view of the relationship that they've been able to build with you. So as a guy who I think I could improve in that area, and there's probably some other folks out there who feel the same way. Can you talk about how you built relationships like that through your career and the impact that those relationships had on how your career grew, like what direction you ended up going, what opportunities were made available to you? Can you speak to that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think from day one, I tried to, as I started learning more and more about Isham and our profession and the organization, I started searching out people who were in leadership positions throughout, whether they were vendors, presidents. I was very fortunate at the time living in Ohio that Richard Schul was just up the road from me. And he was probably at that time the biggest up-and-comer in the industry. So I would drive up to his chapter meetings and attend those. I went to any meeting that I could go to, I went to, and I just hounded my administrators to pay. Like, I need a day off. I got to go get educated. We got to make this stuff right. So I think it was looking for mentors throughout the industry. I just was so fortunate throughout my entire career. I was thinking today about when I founded the Texas State Association, and when we had our first board meeting to talk about starting this chapter and how do we grow it and make it work. And it just dawned on me, there are 4 past presidents in the room here today from Texas who are helping me and coaching me and teaching me and giving me advice. And it's really, really amazing to reach out to those people who know a whole heck of a lot more than you and to try to learn and grow from them. And other than that, I think it's just trying to be kind. I had periods in my life where I was not that way, and it didn't work out well for me. And I just felt like I needed to treat people the way that I wanted to be treated. And so I've kind of taken that mantra my whole life, where I just want to be kind to people and cherish any friendship that I have and anything. And I've just been blessed throughout the entirety of my career meeting professionals, past presidents of Isham, and getting to know them really well. And Chuck Hughes pulled me right under his wing. He came down here and was one of our first speakers at our Texas State meeting. And he just drew me in. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy knows so much. And then Chuck got me to write my first article and said, you need to start speaking. And, he just mentored me and coached me. And so I think that is just looking for people who've been doing what you're doing longer than you and that you respect and you want to grow and be like them, really.
Well, Bob, you kind of were going right where I wanted to go with this, but you haven't fully fleshed it out. And there's 2 aspects of this. You mentioned mentorship, and you mentioned a couple of mentors, Richard Schul and Chuck Hughes. And I want to talk more about your mentors. But you also said something about kindness, where you wanted to treat other people the way that you wanted to be treated. And so there's another part of this mentor conversation, which is the people that you've mentored for that same reason. You know, you wanted to be mentored. You were looking for mentorship. And when it was given to you, you embraced it and you ran with it. And Chuck probably forced you out of your comfort zone in asking you, will you write this article? And telling you, you really need to be speaking. And then that gave you the oomph to go. But I know you've mentored people too. So this is going to be a two-part question. The first part is, are there some other mentors that you'd like to that you'd like to acknowledge or mention while we're talking today, in addition to Richard Schull and Chuck Hughes?
Oh my gosh. Let me get my scroll out. This is a good question and a bad question, because I want to say people, but then I'll feel awful for the people that I've left out. But I'll just run down quickly. And the long list of past presidents: Don Gordon, Ray Tarasi, Richard Schull, Rose Seavey, Thelma Barrett, who was a long time ago for anybody that knows her. All of these people, there were people from inside our industry, Steve Kovach, all of the people, whenever I went to a meeting, and I was just mystified when they spoke, and they were so passionate and so dynamic. And that's for sure. Well, there were three people who kind of made me want to be a speaker for sure. And that's Chuck Hughes, Steve Kovach, and Rick Schultz. The three of them, their combined knowledge just literally blew me away at every conference that I went to. And I just wanted to listen to them and learn from them at any opportunity I could get. And so I just started going to every meeting that I could go to so I could learn from them and hear what they had to say, because they were not only so passionate, but so knowledgeable.
Those were some big time industry names. I think they engaged the audience, and you can see that in your presentation style, Bob. The times that I've seen you speak, you really get people up out of their seats. You get them moving. You get them inspired. You get them passionate. That's what it's all about. And I think that that's the other part of what you saw in those speakers, that they would push a button in their own unique ways that would activate the audience to do something. And that's a different type of mentorship. It's not a direct mentorship, but there is mentorship in that. There's at least role modeling, which is one component of mentorship. So is there anybody that you've mentored over the years that you think went particularly well? And would you give advice to other potential mentors about how to treat and engage and nurture their mentees?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one guy that kind of cracks me up would be Dave Jagrossi. I feel like I was able to be a mentor to him, and Mark Duro would be another guy who are just great guys. And if I had to say one thing about mentoring, be open to it. If someone says, "Hey, I'd like to learn from you, show me, teach me, coach me," be open to it and do it, but go at it with everything that you have. Don't hold anything back. Share everything that you know, every mistake that you've made, every positive thing that's happened, and just try to be the best example of this profession that you can be to them, whether it's from your speaking or your writing or whatever it may be. But just be open and honest, and don't hold anything back.
Bob, last season we did an interview with me, so I guess Justin interviewed me. And the topic of that podcast was building an industry worth loving. And I want to ask you again, looking back on this career, that anybody would be proud to have a career that you built. When we first brought you on to Beyond Clean was the same year that you won the Isham Award of Honor, right? And I just remember that experience of thousands of sterile processing leaders from around the country and around the world, sitting in this big stage. And all the guys that you mentioned, Chuck Hughes, Rick Schultz, like everyone, sitting in this audience. And then whose name do they call? They say Bob Mars, come up on stage for this Lifetime Achievement Award. So in that, looking back on all the things that brought you to where you are, starting at that first day that you hit sterile processing, what are the things that have made you the most proud as a technician, as a leader, as a consultant, and as an advocate, what are those things that you can look back and say, I'm so glad I had the opportunity to do this or to experience that?
I think in the department as a technician, any day that I could go home at the end of the day and say that I truly gave it my best all day long, that gave me a sense of pride and accomplishment. And it was just compounded if I ever received feedback from my manager or another coworker or the operating room. That was like the holy grail. If the operating room said, hey, I got your set today or 10 of your sets today and they were perfect, thank you so much. That is what made me proud. I think going from there, attaining the certifications was another part for me that made me proud. Building relationships certainly made me proud. Being invited to be a part of the Isham executive board, I was blown away that people would look at Bob Mars, this guy from Ohio and Texas, and say, hey, we want you to be on the board. Just having the opportunity, again, to learn and mentor under Sharon Green Golden and Richard Schul, who was a president then. And it's just such an amazing thing. But so as a technician, those were probably the big things. As a manager, anytime my department succeeded or anytime somebody in my department grew and left to become a supervisor or a manager at another facility or an educator, as much as I hated to see them go, it was like a dad. I think I was way too emotional and I cried way too much, but just so proud sitting there watching these people who've worked and come up under you. And now they're going to go be a manager at another hospital. And it really, really gives you a sense of pride to be able to share that. And kind of the same thing with coaching people. And anytime I could help somebody start a new chapter or anything, I think that would just share the experience that I loved so much in this industry and being a part of it, that just made me proud and made me proud and keeps me proud.
I'll tell you, Bob, in 2016, I guess, maybe 2017, I still remember like you and I on a Thursday night, I think, went out to dinner at a seafood restaurant in San Antonio. And I was talking to you about trying to start a chapter down in South Texas. And it was the exact same conversation you just said. You were there as a supporter, as an advocate, as a friend that says, Hank, I'll do anything I can to help you get this thing launched. And I know you've done that, again and again and again for chapters and for leaders all around the country. So in my own small way, I can definitely bear witness to the fact that that's true and you're continuing to do it, obviously. I do want to ask you, though, about career challenges and benefits of staying in SPD long term. All the time on social media, we hear a conversation around, I just started in sterile processing. It's not paying me enough. Do I stay in this role? Do I go work at Starbucks across the street, or do I go to Lowe's? Do I really want to make this a career? And you've been in this industry for decades now in a position that many of us can't even speak to. Like, I've been working in sterile processing for 10 years, 11 years. But to look back on a couple of decades now and that decision that you made to stay in this industry, in sterile processing, what's the upside to that? To saying, yes, you could go somewhere else, but you're going to decide, no, you're going to stay with sterile processing?
For me, I think it was knowing the direct impact that we have on patients' lives every day. And I never, even as a surgical tech, it never really hit me. I would just get frustrated and say, dadgum, they left this out of my tray, or this is not working, but then when I got down there in the department and saw the challenges that sterile processing professionals face every day from, I joke around and talk about that professionals down under scenario where they're underpaid, undereducated, undertrained, under, and they're even under us, typically in the basement of the hospital. But yet here we are, this group of quiet professionals who are working so hard every day to do the very best they can. And at the end of the day, people are leaving the hospital healthy because of them. They've done their job right. They're providing sterile, sets that are in proper working order, and surgeons are using them on patients every day around this country. And people are being healed in hospitals because of people working in sterile processing. So for me, I think that was kind of my why. I knew, I watched my son Luke have an appendectomy when he was 4 years old. And I had a friend from the department come up and say, hey, I put together that general set for your son, knowing that he was having surgery tomorrow. And knowing that people cared that deeply that they would want to take care of my 4-year-old son getting an appendectomy and making sure he had safe instruments. That for me is what kind of drove me. And initially, you guys can attest to this, the money is not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of
You're
us.
talking about a sense of pride, but not the kind that cometh before the fall.
Yes. You do it and you work hard and you work long hours and you don't make a lot of money. But at the end of the day, you know that you're doing something that's really, really good and something that is helping people every day. And I think when you go home and lay your head on your pillow at night and know that you've worked all day to try to do something for other people, that just has a way of making you feel good. And that, to me, that's what sterile processing is. People who work in sterile processing are selfless. They are doing a job for other people that they don't know. And they're doing that job in the hopes that their instruments are able to save a life or touch a life or impact a life.
So let's talk about building a legacy. Let's talk about paying that forward and encouraging others to do the same. And so there's a lot of aspects of that. And I think you might have kind of answered the question, or at least the first part of this one, which is why should somebody start building their legacy in sterile processing? And I think there's another why here, but the why I heard from you, right, was the ability to positively impact the outcome of a patient's surgery in their lives in some positive way, and that you are passionate about that. But there may be more to that why, and there may be other whys. So we'll start there, and then we'll talk about how.
Yeah, I think some of the other whys on top of the patients, you can make or break a surgeon's day in sterile processing. And if you go at it and you're able to make their day, it causes them to treat the patient better and focus on the patient more clearly and directly. So you've got that impact with people that you're providing your service to, whether it's surgery or labor and delivery or the ER or radiology or whoever it may be. I think going at your job every day, thinking about that, how can I do my job better so I can provide them a better service so that they can have a better day? And in turn, all of this stuff that you're trying to pay forward ultimately is going to be the person who pays or gets paid is going to be the patient. So as you work to take care of all these other people, again, at the end of the day, you're able to impact a patient's life. And so for me, that was very, very important. And something that I wanted to do is just be that positive impact influence.
Okay, so now I want to talk about the how, right? So there may be people who are out there and they maybe go to conferences and see people speak, or they have others in the industry that are sort of in their community, maybe not at their facility or maybe at their facility, and they look up to them or they admire them, and they just can't maybe see how they themselves could build a legacy. And so I want to put legacy into context here. And legacy doesn't mean you're a big name on a big stage, right? Your legacy can mean lots of different things. And so, Bob, you built a legacy out of being kind and pulling people together and reaching out and offering your time. And so there are certain aspects of your personality that you were willing to give, but they were also innate talents. I'm sure there are moments when cruelty could have come over in the political dynamics of a chapter, or, maybe even Bishop itself, where your kindness prevented that from getting out of hand and brought people back together. And so that moment itself, and this is really what I was getting at, that moment itself, or that one contribution, could have been a legacy. It's not about attribution. It's about contribution. So Can you talk some more about the hows of building a legacy?
I think one way that I try to do it is act like I was the dumbest person in the room at any meeting that I went to. And so I talked to everyone that I could talk to. I wanted to network and ask people, hey, I'm having these issues. Are you having these issues? And the more I went around and the more I talked to people, I was blown away that literally every sterile processing department is the same people, just different faces and names, right? Everybody is experiencing the same issues, and I didn't know that. I thought they were unique to me. As much as I was nervous about it, I forced myself to go to the front of the room and talk to those speakers to say, oh my gosh, you touched me in ways you can't even believe. May I have your contact information? If it's okay, I would love to reach out to you and talk to you more and learn more from you and maybe shoot you emails occasionally. And everybody that I spoke to was so gracious and open and said, absolutely. And the more that I did that and the more people that I met, it was amazing to me the amount of people who came up and said, hey, you should really try this. You should really do this. You run for executive board. I think you'd be great on the executive board. You could do this. You can do this. You can do this. And I told myself no for a long, long time. But so many people kept coming back and saying, you can do this. You can do this. And guiding and coaching and teaching and mentoring. It really touched me and gave me, I guess, the fuel that I needed to start. I don't think I looked at it as building a legacy, but rather just trying to be the best that I could be in my profession.
Well, I can assure you, you did build a legacy. You know, we're getting to the end of the time, but there's no time limit on an episode for you, Bob. So we kind of had some topics to guide our conversation, but I want to kind of open the floor to you and say, is there anything else that it doesn't even have to be related to building a legacy, but is there just anything else that you feel is just important to say to the industry?
I would say get out of bed every morning and put your feet on the floor and be very, very thankful for the profession that you've chosen because it's an honorable profession and you truly are making a difference. I would say to do everything in your power to learn everything that you can learn about this industry. Some people might say certifications are kind of cliche or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's showing that you've gained some sort of knowledge in this field, in this industry, and the different certifications that you can attain. And so I would tell people to go for the Triple Crown, the Gold Crown, the Diamond Crown, the whatever crown is out there, go grab it. Reach out to the people that you respect and ask them to mentor you, to coach you, to tell you everything that they know about the industry. Be someone who can do the same thing. Share your knowledge with anybody you can, anytime. I think most importantly, just be kind to everybody. Show them that you truly care about them. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And I truly believe that. I don't, you can go into a new department with 5 certifications and degrees and all kinds of stuff and be the worst leader on the planet. Your people want to know that you care about them, that you care that at the end of the day, they may not be able to keep their lights on or pay their car payment, or maybe somebody in their family is sick or someone's recently passed away or whatever it is. But truly getting to know people and being a person who genuinely talks to people, but most importantly, listens to people, to hear their stories and to make their stories a part of your own story. I just think that's really important. Getting to know everything else is great, but at the end of the day, how can you positively impact the lives of the human beings that you're going to interact with every day?
Bob, I'll just say it. Thank you for your generosity. Amen to the words you just spoke.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate having you on, Bob. This was an excellent episode. That was Bob Mars, VP of Clinical Consulting at Beyond Clean. And Hank, I know you've known Bob longer than I have, just from at the time living in Texas and having some experiences with Bob for a long time. And obviously you told that story about starting the chapter. But most of my experience with Bob has been very short term, just leading up to starting Beyond Clean and him joining the team and getting to know him. And he said something during the interview that he wasn't always kind, but I can just tell you, after the last several years of spending time with Bob and us having our meetings, and I just can't even, that would be so foreign to me. I can't even imagine that. And what he's meant for the industry, talking about people that he's mentored, people that have mentored him, and the way he closed that interview was just priceless. This is one of those episodes where we talk about it all the time, like the content's evergreen. You know, right. You can listen to these podcasts in many cases years and years from now, and the themes and the topics will be relevant. But this is timeless. Technology will put some of those podcasts out of date at some point, but the conversation that we had with Bob today will never get out of date. It will be forever, relevant.
I'll give you a good example of Bob Mars in a small way, but I think it tells the story and it really reiterates everything that he shared in this interview. I had just become a sterile processing manager, just decided to start creating content and writing on LinkedIn about the industry. And one of my early articles, I wanted to quote a couple of folks in the industry that I thought were big names, guys that if you saw them out there on the conference circuit, you would know who they were. So I emailed a bunch of folks, and I got responses from one of them who said, yeah, sure, you can quote me or you can share my article or whatever. And you know who that one was? Bob Mars. And it goes back to what he said about how he viewed the value of mentorship for himself, but then how he treated the rest of the industry, no matter who you were. If he didn't know you from Adam, he would treat you with kindness and respect and help you in ways that he could to grow your career and to help you develop more confidence in who you are. And he did that, that one reach out. I didn't know Bob at that time. I just randomly emailed him. And then from that, we built a friendship that has lasted all the way up until today through creating chapters, starting Beyond Clean. All of that came through his kindness and his vision for building a legacy in the industry. So I'm super excited to share this interview with the industry and hopefully encourage folks at the beginning and end of their career to do those things that are going to last beyond your career.
Well, we're going to end the show a little bit different than normal. That is going to do it for this week's show. But I will say, if you have a special memory like Hank just told, or you want to say thank you to Bob for contributing to mentoring you, you can reach him at bob@beyondclean.net. And on behalf of Hank and myself, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Beyond Clean.